Hello, all of you Apocalypse Rising fans. This is a new podcast that I'm starting up. It will be a weekly podcast. So every week I will release another podcast. So this podcast is going to be on what should you do if you encounter a player in Apocalypse Rising. Now, you want to assess your options. The worst thing that you can do is shout out if you see a player, for example, at the radio tower. The worst possible thing you can do is shout out, "Who's at radio tower?" Or if they're at prison, "Who's at prison?" That would not be a good idea at all, because then the player might be reading the global chat, and they would know that someone's watching them, and that would make them more alert and ready for other players to attack them. That is really not a good idea. Not a good idea to do. Now, what you can try to do is see if you can maybe use the interact tool to see and find out what their player name is. If you can find out this, you can possibly send them an invite. This usually does not work considering most players are in a group most of the time. So see if he is in a group. If he is, and you send him a player invite and it says that this player's in a group, then bad luck, you're either gotta run, or you've gotta hide, or you've gotta fight. Now this is the thing, so this is hiding. What should you do if you're hiding from a player? Probably the worst thing you should do is if any zombie comes, you really want to try and use a melee. If you don't have a melee, you're gonna have to shoot the zombie, but you really want to make as minimal noise as possible, because if the player is, for example, wandering around and they suddenly hear gunshots, again, that's going to alert them of a player, even if the gunshots are not at them. They might still hear the gunshots and either leave the game or run away or go around and look for the player who's shooting. Now, also, another thing that is not a good idea to do. You do not want to try and snipe them. Even if you have one of the best sights in the game, it's really not a good idea, because if you miss, or if you hit them, that's good. But you gotta hit them over and over and over, and most likely they're going to be moving around. But they will know that then someone's shooting at them, and especially if you miss, they'll know what direction, so they'll know either where you're at, they'll be able to find you, they'll run the opposite direction over a hill, hide somewhere. It's really not a good idea to snipe unless you have an amazing aim. So I would really, in general, not recommend to try and snipe them. Now, so some of you are asking, Zoink, what do I do if I decide to run away? Well, if you decide to run away, that's a good idea, most of the time. Because usually, players on Apocalypse Rising, you'll have two types of players on Apocalypse Rising. Either the people who are totally decked out and have survived for days, killed thousands of people, an insane amount of zombies, and stuff like that. Or you'll have the people who have no idea what they're doing, and this is either their first time, or they're just generally not good at the game. If you know this player is not generally good at the game, go ahead, attack them. You'll most likely win as long as you're generally good at the game. So, if you want to run, I would recommend wait and hide until they're out of sight and then run the opposite direction. If you start to run as soon as you see a player, they're most likely going to see you, and I would say a good 75% of Apocalypse Rising players will shoot, and they will shoot to kill. So, not a good idea just to start running off the second you see someone. Now, if you do decide to attack someone, I would first off assess their gear, see what they have, see if you can take them, watch them. You want to kind of follow them and see how well they take out zombies, because you know if someone can't take out a zombie, they definitely cannot take out a player. So if they're not good at taking out zombies and stuff like that, go ahead, attack them. Also, most likely, most of the time, you want to have a automatic gun, or a semi-auto, because if you get like a bolt or pump action, it might deal more damage, but it takes longer, and it's easier for the player to run, hide, shoot back, stuff like that. But you always want to make sure that you assess their gear before you just run headfirst into battle. Also, watch them for a little bit and see if they're with a group of players. If they are, if it's two, okay, go ahead. You can probably take them if you have automatic. If it's 3 or more, not a good idea. So that was the Zoinks podcast for this week. Thanks for watching, like, comment, subscribe, and tune in weekly for a new podcast. Goodbye.